Welcome to the Verbal of Change podcast, searching for our quadruple aim, where we highlight, celebrate, and extol others creating positive change in healthcare and beyond. I am super excited for today's episode. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Otten. Today's topic is architecture and medicine collide. I'm joined by two incredible human beings, both who I consider very good friends, my co-host, Jeffrey Johnson, and our guest, Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim, the third eye doctor. Today is going to be a unique intersection of minds where the realms of vision and space converge. Haidar is a remarkable figure whose expertise spans ophthalmology, psychotherapy, and personal development. Today, we're going to explore how our respective professions, one shaping the physical world and the other the human spirit, intertwine in their quest to create environments that not only stand the test of time, but also nurture the soul. So let's embark on this journey together, peering through the lens of design and healthcare to uncover the profound ways in which our surroundings shape our lives and well-being. Jeff, the floor is yours, my friend.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Johnson. I'm your co-host today. I'm an architect by trade. I oftentimes introduce myself as a project psychiatrist or a design optometrist, oftentimes taking that very sensible approach to project leadership and taking an approach where we're constantly evaluating aesthetics relative to personal preference and intent in architectural design. Haidar, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to meet you. So if we can get started, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Todd, for having me on the podcast today. I was born in Iraq in a religious and political family, and I think those are the major strings in my makeup. We had to leave Iraq in 1979 because of the regime was against my family. My dad did a PhD in zoology and marine biology. So I kind of had like four schools of thought sort of pulling me apart, sort of science and then religion and then politics and then, the whole history and legacy of Iraq. And also I happened to be in the UK. So, that kind of muddied the waters even more. And I guess when I was younger, that was a major issue because, what is my identity? Who do I affiliate towards? Because, they're quite powerful. Those five forces were sort of pulling me apart, so to speak. And as a teenager, you're sort of messed up anyway. So yeah, it was a turbulent teenage times. And I guess my father and my mother pushed me towards medicine, as most Middle Eastern parents do for their children. I got into medical school and I thought, big mistake. Because, we were taught essentially not to bring in politics and religion and nationalism into the equation. It was just protocols and procedures. And that really annoyed me. I was really upset by that. Learning medicine in the UK was just about doing things one way. And I knew there was more than one way of doing things. So that was a real annoyance. So for 5 years, I was pretty much depressed and very happy about my career choice. And, the way the system works is that they don't tell you about alternative paths. You just put on this conveyor belt and that's that. So when I left medical school, I knew I wouldn't be happy in the system. And I was trying to find a way out, particularly out of the hospital. And I wasn't really prepared to go and do sort of general practice because of the notion that it's, not a real specialty. So I got onto a ophthalmology training scheme by chance, not by design. I liked it because it's sort of a mixture of medicine and surgery, and you don't spend that much time in hospital, mainly in clinics. But the dream was always to kind of rekindle the Iraq dream, to go back home and live a life in Iraq. I've always been interested in religion. I've always been interested in spirituality, and I'm always interested in politics. So that was always simmering in the background. And then the opportunity came to go back to Iraq in 2004, which I did. And that was a real revelation because I saw the other half of my existence. I left Iraq at the age of 4. Then I went back at the age of 30 or 29. It was awesome because it's not Western. There's no procedures protocol. It's just you and your tribe and the whole of nature to navigate and control in a humanistic way. I started my Iraq adventure, which is a mix of trial and error, my Western self saying, this isn't right, my Eastern reality saying, well, this is right. So it's sort of constant toing and froing between environment, the outside environment and the internal dialogue. And so, yeah, it would have been great to have had some kind of psychoanalytical sessions when I was going through that sort of East-West secular, non-secular turmoil that was going on inside of me. That went on for a few years, and I set up a charity to do ophthalmic work in Iraq in 2006. And I'd be going over 6 months in Iraq to do ophthalmic work. But I think the real challenge for me was dealing with my spiritual turmoil. Where's my real identity, East, West? Where's my real spirit, so to speak? And just trying to deal with the internal contradictions. Because as we know, there is this quite visible dichotomy of existence, which is constantly bashed out even today in 2024. But over the years, I found a kind of middle ground. And I think there's a lot of similarities in medicine where we can find a middle ground between what the finances are saying and what our patients are saying. I think that's where the main battleground is, sort of finding a middle ground between all this.
Sounds like the struggles, based on what I understand with conversations with Todd and reading through the book Ripple of Change, sounds like the struggles of overloaded schedules, not enough space, the struggle of providing what you believe deep down viscerally on patient care is strained by the system. That's not what they consider universal healthcare, right? That's not, it seems like a universal truth across the pond as well. What do you suppose is maybe the impetus for the strain?
I think it's culturally accepted that, even back home, doctors are struggling there as well. And I've been to the Far East, doctors are struggling there as well. So I think it's just a cultural norm that doctors struggle everywhere, and it's just sort of part and parcel of the job. Patients expect you to be struggling and don't have time and to be rude. And, that's what doctors are like. And it's quite rare. Particularly back home in Iraq, it's out of the norm to actually see a doctor who has time and can actually spend a bit of time with the patient and be another human being on the other side and have a proper conversation, which is why I did the podcast, because you can actually take time out and spend as long as you want with someone else who's involved in healthcare and can actually learn something. So maybe that's why it's popular. Maybe that's why people are listening to these sort of things. But no, it's sort of cultural norm, really. So it's outside the cultural norm to see the opposite.
There's certainly a high intensity to the individuals that choose healthcare.
We are sort of recovering psychopaths or sociopaths that have managed to reintegrate into society to a certain extent. But essentially, we are sort of the fringe of society. The more I interact with other physicians, they're not normal human beings or individuals because of the environments that they have to deal with and the constant decision making and sort of the life and death situation. So they do have to take on quite extreme personality traits. Amazing that they keep going. That's my kind of analysis of things. It's like, wow, they're still functioning. They still look like human beings. They still sound like human beings, but sort of deep inside, they're pretty much dysfunctional psychopaths or sociopaths.
There is so much to unpack there.
You thought I was a nice guy, didn't you?
I love talking to you. In fact, I love doing these podcasts, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of catharsis in it. It's sort of talking out some of these feelings and emotions with your colleagues and your friends and what have you. The job is difficult, to say the least. And I think, in our training, we're taught to compartmentalize and put all that stuff in a box. And I often say it's all well and good until it isn't. And I think that's leading to this huge problem we have with burnout and mental health issues and the deaths by suicide and what have you. But on the other side, I've also seen the magical side of medicine. I loved seeing patients. It was a treasure for me. And I'm actually considering going back and doing a little bit of direct primary care. And I have been in those situations where it can work. It takes a lot of effort, It takes a lot of good leadership. It takes the right culture. And interestingly enough, I think I've seen some of the work that Jeff has done in Michigan and just some beautiful buildings that have been renovated. And as I went into one and just how it made me feel as an example, there's an old, what was it? A steam power factory, Jeff, was the one I went into recently. What's the name of the building again?
The decommissioned power plant for the STEM teaching and learning facility at Michigan State.
In Haidar, it is gorgeous. It's a mixture of new and old and light and open spaces and warm feelings and all those things, as opposed to, as I write about in the book, the cold, sterile, white, artificial illuminated stuff that we all are acclimated to, particularly in our training. That in and of itself is along the lines of psychopathic, really. Just put us in a straitjacket and throw us in a call room, right?
It'd be lovely to look at these architectural spaces so that one can copy them, so to speak, into their own, into my own clinical setting. Yeah, I mean, if you come to Negev, we've got some amazing shrines and amazing mosques. And I've just got an epiphany that we should be actually doing clinical work in these places of worship, in these places of spirituality. I mean, what's to stop us from doing that? I know there's the whole regulation and safety issue, but I think that's the downfall of medicine rather than the thing that will actually save us and our patients in terms of healing them from their health worries and problems.
When you take a look at the balance of space, policies, procedures, rituals, and put it all together, you can create an entire experience. And I think when one of those items are out of balance, it starts to cause problems and challenges. So while you're right, the healing nature of some of the greatest pieces of architecture could be the exact thing that we need, what falls out of balance if we choose to do that. And I feel like there's this sort of pendulum relative to sort of a copy paste. This is what we've done in the past. This is the easy model that we understand, the pro forma. We can just implement this type of building and we know that it performs this way for the individuals that use it and reasonably can expect the same result. And who's taking the sort of risk and jumping toward the new paradigm in either space, procedures, techniques, geographic boundaries, and the like. So as I read Todd's book, Ripple of Change, I couldn't help but think of the joy of hearing about the high performance clinic and the culture that he was able to implement within that facility. And I think it was a combination of things like laugh out loud jokes, non-traditional ways of interacting with staff and patients that really break that paradigm and shift toward meaningful change. And I can't help but think how space in architecture also can either support that or create a constraint, but also thinking of that moment when the announcement of Todd going back to a previous location, that architecture, that space, those memories are visceral to a point where it elicits physical stress and the like. So I'm curious always about how space in architecture can enhance experiences that encourage the behaviors that we're looking forward toward promoting, and how our healthcare facilities could potentially improve that experience overall. So,
I mean, I've been in the same sort of workspace, so to speak, over the last decade now. For me personally, I think it's more of an internal architecture space. So, what is my internal architecture like? And that's developed over the years quite significantly. I found that, if the internal architecture is in a good place, then the external has less of an effect on me. I mean, it does have an effect, but not as significant as I thought it would. And, as I climbed up the leadership hierarchy, I found that that's even more important, that my internal architectural space, if it's in a good place, then the rest of the team have, well, I mean, I don't know sort of the internals of their workings, but yeah, I think their internal architectural space is actually different as well. And, that's because of life events in my life, losing my father and having near death experiences and having my own health challenges. That's changed my internal furniture and internal architecture. And, that's allowed me to look at things in a totally different way and categorize things externally in a totally different way. If the architecture, the external architecture, can bring in the other aspects of human existence, including spirituality, including the metaphysics of life, I think it would bring the extra dimension into the whole human healing experience.
Yeah, I see architecture as one of those opportunities to sort of enable experiences. And it really is that opportunity to open up the freedom of those experiences as opposed to having a constraint. Like if we wanted to throw a massive party and we only had a little tiny room, obviously that doesn't work, but enabling the opportunities for the behaviors to occur is definitely an important thing. Todd, what were you going to say?
I'm blown away by just some of the comments that Haidar made in terms of the internal architecture. And I'm going through some stuff right now where that's very much on my mind is how do I work on my internal architecture to get it to a better place? And the work that Jeff does, I've seen how that could help that. I just wanted to give really one example and then I'll throw it back to you, Jeff. The building that we were talking about earlier, the egress, you think of a standard egress, exit, right? The stairs down, it's that cold, there's cement walls. I'm putting my hands up. No one can see me. This is ridiculous. This is audio. So there's those cold white walls, there's no light, and nobody uses them, right? But in the building Jeff remodeled, it's almost all glass. And the one other side is wood. And the number of people utilizing it as opposed to getting on the elevator or what have you was tremendous. And I was there at like some weird hour where nobody was on campus and it made you feel good. And literally I was just walking up and down the stairs. That's the kind of thing that, why can't we get more of that into healthcare? I think it would help. So I just wanted to add that. That's all. Back to you, Jeff.
So yeah, I appreciate that. So Haidar, as you think of like stress reduction and the like, we think that architecture and the sort of aesthetics and the way that the buildings are built, the way that natural light comes into the space, and the way that it embraces a biophilic sort of approach could be really important based on your own experiences. Can you describe maybe a space that you were in or a moment you were in? And then, so if you think of the moment that was like this sort of blissful moment, what was the space around you?
What I really enjoy at work is sort of having our break. So, we have an hour's break in between an 8-hour shift. And that's the best part, of our clinical situation or, clinical setting where we just get together as a whole group. And I'm kind of family orientated as well. I'm really close to our other ophthalmologists and other allied healthcare professionals at a personal level. And, it's just like coming together and having dinner and just unwinding from 4 hours of intense clinical work. And it's great. And it's really fun. We close the door as well behind us because language gets very colorful. We create sort of comedy scenes about certain clinical situations. And yeah, we sort of eat together, laugh together, cry together, and just be, one big dysfunctional family, which is what I have and I've always come from. And then the worst part is having to go back and go to war again, so to speak. But, that's always great fun, knowing that we can actually unwind and be our normal selves again. Sometimes some of the staff have to spend another 10, 15 minutes seeing patients and so on. And then they can hear us all laugh in the other room. Even the patients start commenting, why is there laughter here, particularly of the certain, what do they call them, Karen or Ken types. They get quite upset about that clinical sessions shouldn't have laughter and joy and fun and things like that. So yeah, I'm a real proponent of injecting laughter officially in these sessions and also in between, you know, official clinical settings. Yeah, we do have a good laugh and very colorful language and not particularly politically correct. So yeah, we do a lot of that in our daily work activities.
I very much had a similar type of culture in the quote unquote office utopia. My office pretty much looked like a flea market with little trinkets and Spider-Man stuff and Legos that people had given me. And at one point, the nurse practitioners had put this huge rainbow unicorn above my desk, and I think it stayed there for a better part of a year. But it was a space that, despite its, having no windows and being bland, but you felt comfortable to come in and sit down. There was a coffee table, there was a couple chairs, and a lot of times the four of us would cram in there and talk about cases and laugh and go over things and and just be human beings. And that is so important, no matter what you're doing, to be able to let your guard down like that.
I mean, it gets us through the day.
And in many spaces, particularly in healthcare, it's absent. It's completely absent. And I think it shows, and that's unfortunate. Maybe I'll do a quick Ripple challenge question here, and then we'll give it back to Jeff to continue on with this fascinating conversation. So there's really no rules to this. I'm going to ask you to pick between two architectural styles. So why don't we start with Jeff? Art Deco or Victorian?
I'm going to go with Victorian. I think when it's done well, it's a little bit gingerbread house, but if you see it done well and it's historic renovation, I could get behind that. If somebody is putting decorations in that on a brand new building, trying to replicate the style of the past, not so much for me.
How about you, Haidar?
Art Deco, definitely. I don't want to be stuck in a prison and just getting depressed. No way. There's lots of colors and lots of weird stuff in there, and I'll let my imagination take over.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Art Deco, and I went on an architectural tour in Chicago. They have a ferry that takes you through the city on the river, and they're pointing all the different buildings. So anyways, all right, Jeff, back to you, sir.
Relative to the amount of things that you're attempting to try and do in life, and given the fact that there is finite amount of time that's unknown, how do you prioritize and focus to make sure that you are making a difference?
I think number one for me is sort of internal energy. If something gives me energy, I know it's in the right track. And if something is draining me, I know I'm on the wrong track. So that's like a simple way of saying it. I'll give you an example. If Arsenal win and Todd gives me a message, or we sort of interact in the sort of the goodness of that, I know that's a winner. I know that's an absolute winner. No matter what I'm doing, I'll always drop everything and say, "Nice one, mate. Good stuff." If it raises my spirits, then I'm all for it. So yeah, I mean, I've got all sorts of things going on at the same time, but I'm quite good at saying no now, whereas before it was much more difficult. Now I'm really good at saying no, and I tend to say no to most things because I know it's not for me, even though there are these other things that say it's a reward or it's a thumbs up or makes you lots of money and so on.
To me, there seems to be another pandemic, not necessarily the COVID pandemic, but there appears to be a pandemic in mental health and overall wellness of individuals. What do you think the cause might be broadly? And could you describe maybe a few techniques from your sort of personal development practice of what you would recommend to an individual and trying to come out of a funk or trying to become more well?
Yeah, I say generally speaking, in simple terms, it's lack of connection and loneliness on a humanistic level. I think that's the reason why people have delved into their thoughts and their dark psyches, and that can take you to some horrible places. So that's my general answer to that. The way to get out of it is how we got out of it when we were younger, is go and see your mates and, have a fight or play together or go and do something. And yeah, just reconnect with other human beings. in the flesh, but if you can't do it in the flesh, then virtually. And if you can't do it virtually, then over the phone. So reconnecting with other human beings, because our mental health is predicated on our social interactions. So the more you are social and the more that you interact socially with other human beings, the more likely you are to regulate your mental well-being.
Like, we have a renovation in our office right now, and a lot of individuals are challenging us of why we're spending dollars in a physical space, especially for an office environment where there's a lot of pressure or flexibility of workplace, working remotely and the like. There's a lot of convenience that way, but we're certainly seeing that exact same thing that you just mentioned, the lack of social working together, the collaboration, the sort of interaction on a day-to-day basis, just to tell your buddy to piss off because their football team beat yours or whatever it happened to be. Move on with your day, right? So it seems like you have some deep connections, like the rest of us, with some of your buddies that you can be very open, transparent, and, joke around with. Who was your best friend as a kid?
Best friend as a kid was a chap called Mojo. His name's Mohammed. Really great guy, but he's really annoying. He was an absolute annoying asshole because he always had an answer to whatever I said, and it really annoyed me. So he was my best friend because all the other friends I had, I was too clever for them or whatever, maybe too manipulative, too psychopathic and so on. But this guy always said, no, this is this is that. And it sort of kept me sane and kept me on the straight and narrow. And we used to go to the gym together. And he was an honest bloke, which is what I loved about him. And I guess, yeah, it's sort of finding my own honesty in this sort of world. But since then, I sort of contact him every now and then, and he still annoys me. But when I was a kid, it was nice to know that there was someone there that would tell you it like it was. And yeah, he was a decent guy. So yeah, he was my best mate.
It's always good to have a friend that can keep up with you, for one,
Yeah.
can be honest, and you understand that they are coming from a good spot, that even though you're being told what you don't want to hear, that it's probably what needs to be said. Todd and I often have that kind of relationship of being able to go back and forth from a philosophical standpoint, from what's going on in the world, why is it happening, those types of things. And we can ease each other to a point where it doesn't get terribly serious. And we know that we are coming from a good spot. So,
Well, Haidar, it now makes sense why all my friends call me an asshole.
Yeah. Which one more, the arse or the hole?
Depends on the friend.
it's actually the whole ass.
Yeah,
The whole
at times I think we're all there, right? This is fantastic. I want to touch on some of the work you're doing and some of the work you've done, and obviously give you a chance to impart maybe one more thought, really on whatever you want, because this has been a brilliant conversation on many levels, and I respect and appreciate both of your inputs today. There's so much learning to be had. There's so much healing that can occur, and I'm in a place right now where I'm trying to work on a little bit of self-compassion. And this conversation has been helpful for me on that level. And so I thank you both for that. So I want to make sure that people are aware where to find Jeff. He's on LinkedIn. And then his company is IDS, which is, I don't want to mess it up, Jeff.
In design solutions.
Thank you. And then Haidar, his book is great. Physician on Fire. I recently read it. I loved it. It's just a unique spin on life and how you can think about things in his journey. It's really a beautiful story. So if you want a fun read, definitely check it out. And his podcast, The Surgical Spirit, is absolutely wonderful. Having been a guest on it, it was a treasure. It was a joy. My plug is obviously Ripple of Change, the book. And then we're working on an audiobook, which you can find on Patreon for a small monthly subscription fee. And the interesting part of that is there's going to be a lot of other content that's going to be coming through there as well. So if you're interested, that's www.ourquadrupleaim.com. And then I'd like to offer you maybe 30 seconds for final thought, and then I'll wrap it up.
I absolutely appreciated the conversation. Thank you so much for your insights. Just one plea to everybody out there. Notice the architecture in the space around you. Oftentimes it becomes a backdrop for memories. And when you really start to analyze the space that you're in the experience that you're having, wonder whether or not the space is creating that feeling or whether the experiences and how they intertwine with each other. So just a plea for recognizing architecture and the role it has in society today.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Jeff, for this opportunity to sort of speak my mind. I decided to go back to Iraq later this year, so permanently. So just to let everyone know that Iraq's still open for business, and if you want to be involved in Iraq, get in touch with me. There's lots of opportunities there.
Thank you both. This was truly a pleasure, full of laughs, and I can't thank you enough. What positive ripple of change will you create today?
Grab your copy today. Ripple of Change is available in hard, soft, and ebook formats. More information at www.ourquadrupleaim.com. Thanks for listening, and let's turn ripples into waves of lasting change. Stay tuned to this podcast as we search for examples of our quadruple aim.